The story opens inside a massive alien capital palace during a silent emergency council. An ancient alien war relic, older than their empire, has stopped working. This relic once protected their entire civilization from extinction. The aliens believe it is alive, sacred, and untouchable. Every alien expert has failed to repair it. The relic begins to decay, cities lose power, shields flicker, old enemies awaken. In the background, a human maintenance engineer quietly watches, unnoticed. He was only there to fix climate systems. The council debates whether to abandon their homeworld. The relic suddenly reacts, not to alien technology, but to the presence of the human. The relic emits a pulse. Ancient symbols react. Every alien turns slowly toward the human. Silence. The question, why did it respond to him? Name: Daniel Cross. Role: human systems engineer, not military, not diplomatic. Background: grew up repairing broken machines on frontier colonies. Learned by listening, not manuals. No special rank, no importance, or so he thinks. Tone: calm, humble, practical. Daniel doesn't want attention. He thinks the relic is just badly designed maintenance-wise. Welcome to my channel, Starlight Sci-Fi Stories. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. The Hall of Continuance had not been this silent in over 3,000 cycles. Light from the crystal ceiling flowed slowly like frozen lightning, casting long shadows across rows of alien figures standing in perfect stillness. Their robes shimmered with status markings, age symbols, and bloodline codes older than most stars humans knew by name. At the center of the hall, beneath a suspended ring of ancient machinery, rested the object that terrified them all. The relic. It was not beautiful in a simple way. Its surface was layered metal, dark and scarred, carved with symbols that no one alive could fully translate anymore. Veins of faint blue light pulsed weakly beneath its skin, like the last heartbeat of something dying very slowly. Once, it had protected their entire civilization. Now it was failing. A low vibration rolled through the hall, barely audible, but every being present felt it in their bones. Several elders shifted uneasily. That vibration had not existed before. It was new, and new things frightened old empires. High Curator Salvar stepped forward, his long limbs stiff with controlled fear. The decay has accelerated, he said, his voice amplified softly by the hall's acoustics. Power loss across outer defense lattices has reached 14%. A ripple of tension spread through the gathered council. 14% meant cities without shields. 14% meant ancient enemies would notice. 14% meant extinction was no longer theoretical. We have maintained the relic exactly as commanded by tradition, another counselor said sharply. Every ritual, every preservation protocol. Yes, Salvar replied, and it is still dying. No one argued, they all knew it was true. At the very back of the hall, near a maintenance archway designed for servants and systems workers, a human stood quietly with his hands clasped behind his back. Daniel Cross did his best not to stand out. That was usually easy. Humans were still rare here, and when they did appear, they were watched carefully. Daniel wore simple gray work coveralls with a faded insignia from the Interstellar Infrastructure Corps stitched on the shoulder. A tool belt hung at his side, scratched and worn. He had been called here because a climate regulator had malfunctioned in the upper levels of the palace. That problem was already fixed. He should have left. But the door sealed behind him, and no one had noticed him enough to dismiss him. So he stayed. And he watched the relic. Daniel didn't know its history, he didn't know its legends, but he knew machines, and the longer he looked at it, the more uncomfortable he became. Something about it felt wrong. Not broken in a dramatic way, not cracked or shattered. It felt tired, like a system that had been running far past its intended service life without proper shutdowns. The relic pulsed again. This time, several counselors flinched. "That was stronger," someone whispered. High Curator Salvar turned slowly toward the engineer's platform. "Have any diagnostics changed?" A group of alien technicians lowered their eyes. "No," one admitted. "The relic rejects all invasive analysis, as it always has." A murmur of frustration spread. Daniel frowned. "Rejects analysis? That wasn't normal. Systems didn't reject diagnostics unless they were locked, damaged, or misunderstood." He shifted his weight slightly. The relic pulsed again. This time, the blue light beneath its surface brightened, just a little. Every head in the hall turned toward it. Then something impossible happened. The symbols along the relic's side flickered. Not randomly. They flickered in rhythm. Daniel's breath caught. "That's not decay," he murmured under his breath. "That's feedback." "What did you say?" snapped a voice. Daniel froze. Dozens of alien eyes locked onto him. High Curator Salvar stared. "Human, you spoke." Daniel swallowed. Slowly, he stepped forward just enough to be visible. "Apologies," he said carefully. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Silence pressed down on him like gravity. "You are maintenance," Salvar said, his tone sharp. "You were not summoned to speak." "I know," Daniel replied, "but the relic isn't failing the way you think." A sharp intake of breath echoed through the hall. Counselor Vethral rose from her position, her crest flaring in agitation. "You dare interpret the sacred engine?" Daniel hesitated. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea. But the relic pulsed again. Stronger. Lights dimmed across the hall. Alarms did not sound, because the systems tied to them were older than recorded history. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I don't see a god," he said quietly. "I see a machine that's been preserved instead of maintained." That was the wrong thing to say. Several counselors erupted in angry speech. Others recoiled as if struck. Salvar raised a limb for silence. "You claim understanding," the curator said, "yet our greatest minds have failed." Daniel nodded. "That happens when everyone is taught the same rules." The relic pulsed again. This time, a soft harmonic hum filled the hall. It was low, gentle. Daniel's eyes widened. "That's a handshake signal," he whispered. No one else understood the words. But they understood what happened next. The relic's outer shell shifted. Just a fraction. Enough to prove it had heard him. The hall erupted into chaos. Security drones activated. Counselors shouted orders. Ancient defense protocols stirred for the first time in centuries. Salvar's voice cut through it all. "Stop." The drones froze midair. The curator stared at Daniel with something new in his eyes. "Fear." "You will explain," Salvar said slowly, "why the relic responded to you." Daniel's mouth felt dry. "I didn't activate it," he said. "I just listened." That answer made no sense to them, which terrified them even more. They escorted Daniel forward under heavy guard. He walked carefully, aware that one wrong word could end his life. As he approached the relic, the hum grew stronger. Not louder. Clearer. Daniel stopped a few steps away. He did not touch it. Instead, he knelt. That shocked the room. Humans did not kneel to alien artifacts. But Daniel wasn't kneeling in worship. He was lowering himself to align his hearing, with the vibration patterns traveling through the floor. "There," he said softly, "hear that lag?" The engineer stared at him, confused. "It's desensed," Daniel continued. "Core rhythm and shell feedback are out of phase. You're forcing it to stay awake when it needs to cycle down." Salvar's voice was strained. "The relic must never sleep." Daniel looked up at him. Everything breaks if it never rests. The relic pulsed sharply. A warning. Daniel raised his hand slowly. I'm not trying to shut it down, he said. I'm trying to stop it from tearing itself apart. Silence fell again. Finally, Salvar spoke. If you are wrong, you doom us all. Daniel nodded. If I'm right, you might finally save it. The curator hesitated, then made a decision that would rewrite their history. Proceed, he said. Daniel closed his eyes. He adjusted nothing physical. Instead, he spoke. Not words meant for people, but frequencies, tones, soft rhythmic taps against the floor with his fingertips, matching the vibration pattern he felt through his bones. The relic responded. Light stabilized. The hum smoothed. Power readings across the capital leveled. Engineers gasped as data flooded their displays. For the first time in recorded history, the relic accepted correction instead of resisting it. Daniel opened his eyes. That's all for now, he said. Anything more and it'll overload. Salvar stared at him, voice barely audible. What are you? Daniel stood slowly. Just an engineer, he said. One who doesn't like seeing systems suffer because people are afraid to touch them. The relic pulsed once more. Not weak. Not failing. Recognizing. And in that moment, the ancient empire understood something terrifying and wonderful. The relic had not awakened for them. It had awakened for a human who was willing to listen. The relic did not fall silent after that day. It changed. Across the capital world, sensors registered something they had never recorded before. Not a surge, not a weapon charge, but balance. Power flows stabilized. Harmonic feedback evened out. Ancient systems that had once flickered at the edge of collapse settled into steady operation. The Empire did not celebrate. They watched. In the Hall of Continuance, the Council stood in uneasy silence as streams of data flowed across floating displays. High Curator Salvar remained motionless at the center, his gaze fixed on the relic and the human standing beside it. Daniel Cross looked exhausted. Dark circles marked his eyes. His shoulders were tense, not from fear but from effort. Listening the way he did took energy, focus, time. The relic was not a simple machine. It was layered thought built by minds that had died before the Empire itself had been born. How long will this stability last? Salvar finally asked. Daniel exhaled slowly. If no one interferes, a while, weeks, maybe longer. That is not enough, Counselor Vethral said sharply. Our enemies will notice the change. They always do. As if summoned by the words, alarm sounded. This time they worked. Holographic symbols ignited above the council floor. Red, fast, urgent. An aide spoke, voice tight with fear. Long-range detection confirms movement at the system's edge. Multiple signatures. Silence fell. Everyone knew those signatures. The ancient devourers. The ones the relic had been built to stop. Salvar turned toward Daniel. Can the relic defend us? Daniel didn't answer right away. He closed his eyes, listening again to the low hum traveling through the floor and air. It could, he said slowly, but it shouldn't. The words hit the room like a shockwave. You refuse, Vethral demanded. I refuse to break it again, Daniel replied. You've spent centuries forcing it to behave like a wall. It was never meant to be one. Salvar's limbs twitched. It saved us before. Daniel opened his eyes. No, it adapted you before. There's a difference. He walked closer to the relic, placing his palm near its surface without touching it. It doesn't want to fight, he continued. It wants to think. The Devourer's fleet advanced. Outer systems reported distortion waves. The clock was ticking. What do you propose? Salvar asked. Daniel turned back to the council. We stopped treating it like a god, and we stopped treating it like a weapon. That made no sense to them. So he explained. The relic, Daniel said, was a caretaker system, a learning construct. It observed threats, yes, but it responded by reshaping environments, behaviors, and probabilities. The Empire had forced it into a single role through fear and ritual. They had crippled it by worship. To fight the Devourers, Daniel said, you don't need a bigger shield, you need unpredictability. Sailvar's voice was low, and you can give us that. Daniel shook his head, not alone. The council leaned forward. You need to help, he continued. All of you, engineers, analysts, not priests, not bloodline keepers, people who are willing to learn. That knowledge is sacred, Vethral snapped. Daniel met her gaze evenly. So is survival. There was a long pause. Then Sailvar did something no curator had done in recorded history. He lowered his head. Teach us, he said. The relic pulsed. Soft. Accepting. They worked without rest. Daniel showed them how to listen, not with ears but with patience, how to recognize feedback not as disobedience but as communication, how to let systems fail safely so they could recover stronger. It was slow, messy, uncomfortable. And it worked. The relic began to change again, not by force, by cooperation. Its light shifted from rigid blue to a complex spectrum. Its internal rhythms adapted. It was no longer following old commands. It was learning again. The Devourers entered the outer system. They expected resistance. They found confusion. Gravity wells twisted subtly. Navigation data became unreliable. Energy readings contradicted themselves. The relic did not attack. It lied. The Devourers hesitated. That hesitation saved the Empire. By the time the enemy realized what was happening, the relic had already rewritten engagement parameters. It had not built walls. It had removed certainty. The Devourers withdrew. Not defeated. Outplayed. In the aftermath, the council reconvened. There was no cheering, no triumph. Only understanding. Sailvar faced Daniel one final time in the Hall of Continuance. You have changed us, the curator said. Daniel shrugged tiredly. You changed yourselves. What will you demand in return? Vethral asked. Daniel smiled faintly. Nothing. That answer unsettled them more than any request. I'll stay long enough to help stabilize the systems, he continued. Then I'll go back to my work. Sailvar studied him carefully. We will create a new order, caretaker engineers, open to all species. Daniel nodded. Good. And you? Sailvar asked. Daniel looked at the relic one last time. It pulsed gently, like a living thing at rest. I'm just someone who listens, he said. The Empire remembered that. Long after Daniel Cross left their world, they told the story. Not of a human who conquered them, but of one who fixed what they were too afraid to touch. They learned that preservation, without understanding, leads to decay. And that sometimes, the greatest strength comes from those who kneel not in worship, but to hear the quiet truths beneath the noise. The relic continued its work. So did humanity. Not as rulers, but as caretakers. And